So, hi everybody, thanks for coming. My name's Andy Vaughn. I work at Dolby. I'm the developer relations manager. You need headphones. Okay. I'm the developer relations manager for Dolby, and so what that really means is that I get to work with game developers and with content creators to get them to create mixes that are a little more compelling and a little more immersive. Thankfully, I get to work with people who do some very creative work. I've got a couple of guys on stage right now who have really mastered the PC side of things, but before I introduce them, I want to give you a quick overview of where we are. First off, who came last year and had to sit through my talk? One. Thank you. Last year I talked about the platform an awful lot, and this year I'm going to turn it loose to content creators instead, because as a result of having a platform underneath us, we've got about 14 games in Atmos now, which is pretty exciting. We have great games from Blizzard, from Ubisoft, from Square Enix, from a lot of people who are making some really compelling experiences out there with spatial audio. One of the places that you can build spatial audio is also on the PC. So any Windows 10 PC, any Xbox One device, they all deliver spatial audio to your home theater system, over soundbars, over headphones. We pretty much hit every single replication point for a person who's playing a game. So with that said, we want to talk about the PC specifically, and we want to talk about how you build in spatial audio for Unity Engine. And so with that, I want to introduce you to Chet and Gage Lucas of Iron Arm Games. They have worked tirelessly to make all this come together, and they want to show you how they pull it together into a game scene. Good. So Chet's first.
Thank you, Andy. So hello, my name is, you can hear me? Can you hear me? Sometimes I get a little flamboyant, so you might have to adjust me a little bit on there. My name's Chet. I'm the creative director for Iron Arm Games. We're a small indie studio comprising of 5 members. We originally were creating assets for other developers, ranging from things to audio to in-game assets and core mechanics. After doing that for a few years, we kind of realized, why aren't we making our own game? And we saw a bunch of holes in other developers and what they were kind of doing, and we wanted to improve upon that. So I'm going to go ahead and give us a brief overview about what I'm going to be talking about. It's going to be a little bit about our process and how we go about doing game design. It's a little bit off the norm, since I know some of you are in game design. In fact, most of you probably are, and there's going to be it's going to be your own unique experience when you're coming along with that. So our current project is aptly named Lords of Rim. I'm going to touch a little bit on it. I'm not going to give too much. We're just not there in the development process yet to kind of reveal what we got cooking in the lab. But essentially, the goal was to create a truly personal role-playing experience set in the high fantasy world of Rim. Now, we were big RPG players back when, like, Diablo and Baldur's Gate, were really popular, and we wanted to take that experience and kind of emulate that today, because we see trends now where the storytelling is really falling flat, and a lot of things are just, hey, go over here and kill that 100 times, and there's nothing going on with the player and engaging you and immersing you in that world. And I think that's really missing. We want you to feel like you're a part of this world. You see the people, you see Bob at the tavern, and he knows your name, and you can interact and you can do all kinds of things. So we want to try to translate that with our project that we're currently working on. So I spoke a little bit about reading lore in you. So what that means is questing, speaking to people, being a part of the world in general. You just don't see that as often. It's masked in other ways, and it's kind of sad, because storytelling in RPGs is obviously very important. So when you're trying to do things like that, especially us, we found it to be a precocious tool, and that's where the audio comes into play. So where we are in development, we're at our second pass of conceptual art. We're still doing a lot of world building and fleshing out exactly who these people are, the culture of the inhabitants of Rim. Some of the core mechanics Gage will be touching on here in a little bit of what we're trying to achieve, which takes us to our next point, which is the world building aspect. So creating believable content by pulling from reality. History always instructs. I know a lot of people do a lot of creative writing, maybe even some of you, they listen to music, like your favorite rapper or rock group, and you try to pull from that. I do a lot of that too. Anyone know the band Ghost by chance? Any Ghost fans? A couple of you? Yeah, so it's really thought-provoking. So a lot of music is, a lot of reading is, a lot of TV shows are, and people pull from that. In particularly, I'm a bit of a history buff, so I like pulling from ancient mythology or a biblical battle that happened, as cheesy as that may sound, which leads to people, places, and the culture. So I don't know if it's in particularly just me, and I just have maybe a little bit of OCD, but when I'm creating an area, I always start with the people. What are they wearing? Where they come from? What do they eat? Do they have cattle? What kind of cattle? Are they up in the mountains? If they're up in the mountains, they obviously can't be having drives with cattle, so that kind of limits what they're doing as a people. In ancient times, you had hues like, or colors like blue and purple, which signified royalty. Do these people have that? So a lot of storytelling tools. So always proofread your source material. I write a lot. It's probably an unhealthy amount. And what's funny about it is I'll come back to it 2 days later, and I can't believe the cringy things that I'm writing and I'm coming up with. And some things, I'll be watching a show in my spare time trying to wind down, and I was like, oh yeah, I might have ripped that off by accident. And so I have to go back and try to world build in a different way. Plato once said, the worst of all deceptions is self-deception. Just because you wrote it doesn't mean it's good, and I'll be the first one to admit that. So you always got to be your worst critic. I mean, pass it on to colleagues, friends, whomever, and kind of come back in a couple days and take a gander at it. So this leads to a loose explanation of the design phase. So here, I'm sure almost everybody knows Trello. We use it. We also use it in conjunction with Discord. It's really a good team building tool. So understanding the world you've created and exactly what is that. So I call that the lore logistics, which is essentially taking those world building aspects that I explained before about where these people are and what their culture is, and trying to build off that and making it something really condensed and comprehensive so that it makes sense to the people that are actually going to be playing your game, and it doesn't sound like cheese or gassy vampires or something really crazy and fantastical. So filtering the fantastical concepts from the narrative. So I know some of you may be working on games that are supposed to have that aspect, like sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their heads or something like that. I mean, that's fine, but always remember that when you're creating something that is supposed to be fantastical, it's usually best to completely tone it down and base it in reality and let it all speak for itself. And that's what makes it so fantastical, or at least in my experience. So this is where I'm going to start talking about introducing the spatial audio to simplified environments. We're a small studio. We just don't have the capital to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on assets to build test worlds on assets we may not even use. So we kind of inadvertently found a technique to really flush out areas and get that culture of the people in the world building process, which was we would have our artist mock up an area. Is anyone familiar with parallaxing at all? Like parallaxing images? You may have seen them like Blizzard promos perhaps on Twitter, a couple of you. So yeah, what we did is we took that, put it in just an easy video editor and made parallaxing environments super cheap to do, and then we introduced spatial audio to that, and it completely made a 2D environment 3D in like a matter of an hour. It's actually quite stunning, and that even improved on the world building aspect. So little cool tip there. So this is a bit about how our development cycle worked and what didn't work, and it was fraught with a lot of failure. So here I've kind of slipped in here a little bit of our artwork of what we got cooking. This was some really early artwork. There was a lot of trial and error. Just various ways to create the art, understand the people, especially for me being the storyteller and seeing my world come to life. It put things in a it put things in a certain light because I saw what worked and what didn't work. And we had hundreds of mock-ups come, and we weren't getting anywhere. And I didn't understand why for the longest time, for the better part of maybe 6 or 7 months. So we had to change that. We had to make a more efficient creation process. So we took it back to year 0. We were like, okay, well, let's break this down. Let's take it, let's get done with it. Let's create 100 heads for this particular race of people. How about facial adornments? Let's get 100 of those. What about arms? Sure, give me big, small, scrawny ones. Just everything you could think of down to the T to really create something. So now we've moved past from what you see up here on the screen to something far more extensive, and that just added more to the world building process and compounded that. So this is where I'm going to be introducing the spatial audio to in-game engine areas. So we did have prepared one of those parallaxing videos. We broke the audio. That's what you get for tinkering with things the day before. So unfortunately, I don't have that. We will be posting it up though on our website. So if you're interested and you got a small team and you want something that's really cost effective to kind of flush out your worlds, by all means, take a look and steal the idea, pass it on. In really pairing in that high quality audio to your project lore, I mean, some of us, you've probably fished around in asset markets because you just don't have the capital to pay someone hundreds of thousands of dollars to create your entire game for you. And you'll see there's just a lacking of stuff there. So we were trying to find a solution to that for the longest time. So next, I'm going to be bringing up Gage here. He's going to be going over a bit about the Dolby Spatial Audio plugin and going over the technical side. He's the lead programmer. I'm just a lowly writer. I mean, my job's way cooler, but I'm sure his will be a little bit more fun. So come on up and yeah. Sweet.
All right, can everyone hear me? Awesome. All right, well, thank you guys for coming again. So I'm going to kind of be going over just how me as a programmer, how I tackle integrating the technology that we're going to be showing you in one of the demos here into the Unity engine, and how you guys can kind of take control of your games and get different storytelling techniques with 2D audio, 3D audio, and just using the whole spatial quality of it. I have a few points that I really want to talk about, which is mainly where you can actually get the plugin for Unity to start working with this stuff. So you could go to developer.dolby.com, and that's where you're going to actually be able to download the Unity plugin. From there, it's just as simple as importing the asset and just starting to work with it. So I think we have a slide here. Okay. Let me play the demo for you guys here real quick. More here? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so all you do is go to developer.dolby.com and you guys download and import the asset into your Unity project. I believe it supports anything from 2017.4 and upwards. So after we play the demo, I'll go ahead and jump into the physical Unity project and show you guys how you set up the audio manager and how you guys set up actually Windows 10 to utilize some of the spatial audio. So let me go to the in here. Okay.
Adjust how you need, maybe.
Yeah, we found like a volume on your control of around like 3 1/4 seems pretty good. Right. Yeah, so this isn't our game itself. This is just a lot of just free assets that we pulled from the Unity Asset Store. So that way you guys can help visualize and you guys can follow along at home on how to create some of these immersive worlds using the plugin. So I'll go ahead and start this off for you guys here. All right. So we're going to stop that right there. So essentially, if you guys were able to notice, there's a lot of audio being demonstrated on the height plane, right? A lot of things overhead, footsteps actually being able to be heard spatially on the left and the right. And then, you had the breathing that was here on the Z plane. So essentially what this plugin is allowing everyone to do is being able to utilize 7.1.4 mixes inside of Unity and being able to take advantage of the spatial qualities. So I'm going to hop over to the engine and I can show you guys how you can bring this stuff in. So after you download the plugin and you import it into Unity project, you're going to be left with this folder here from Fabric, right? The next step that you would do is simply go over to your audio manager window, right? And you could usually find that under your edit tab here, and I believe it's under the project settings, right? From there, all you do is you go to your Spatializer plugin, select the Fabric, Microsoft Audio, or Microsoft Spatializer from the dropdown, and that's it. You guys are all ready to go. Now, if you are using headphones, which I highly suggest when you're creating these games and you're testing out your audio, what you can do is you can go to Dolby Access and you guys can download the Dolby Atmos software on your computer, and you guys will have an option here to actually, let me see if I can find it. You guys will have an option on your sound settings for spatial sound here, right? And you guys can see the Dolby Atmos for headphones option on there. If you don't have Dolby Access and you don't have Dolby Atmos, you could also use the Windows Sonic for headphones. But me, myself, I like the Dolby Atmos. It just feels like a more premium experience. Yeah, so from there, I'm kind of going to go over a little bit of what stock Unity has as far as 2D and 3D audio goes, and then kind of break down what more the plugin is doing for you and how you could utilize some of these panners that you're going to get with the custom inspector here for Unity. So generally 2D audio in Unity is handled kind of like as just global audio that you just have playing, right? You can kind of hear it anywhere you're at, or you could do a mix between 2D and 3D. And it has its place, but when you're able to use a static audio source like a 2D audio source and add the spatial qualities to that, you then are able to tweak, as you could see here on the panel here for the audio source. You have the X axis that you could push this audio source, onto, and mind you, this is all, a static audio source that's 2D, but instead of it just being global all around you, right, you're pushing it forward itself on the Z axis, or if you want to push forward on the X, or a combination of all three. So it really just adds that full 3D dynamic instead of having just 2D audio drown out all around you, and it's not really on any plane. More so just on the horizontal plane generally. So 3D sound obviously has its, custom roll-offs that you can customize in here. So you have the default ones that it comes with, or you can go custom, and you have the min and max distances with those. So usually the minimum distance is what you're going to get with the full volume. And then the max distance obviously is going to be the max distance from the camera or from your audio listener to the audio source, to where you're no longer going to hear that audio. Now, when you bring this plugin in, you're going to have these spatialized boolean here exposed to you, which will then allow you to take control of the audio source and have it actually be spatialized. So what we did for this demo here that you guys just saw is we essentially just attached a few of these 2D static audio sources to this cinematic camera, which was essentially just following a spline path, kind of just like a roller coaster all the way through our forest scene here. And we are utilizing some breath audio for like the rainy, cold environment. We have a left and a right step audio source, and then we just have some random audios playing for, foliage, tree snapping sounds, trees bending and things like that, to kind of just bring the world to life. In the demo you guys just saw, there was around, I'd say, a pool of just 70 audio clips split between like footstep sounds, breathing, and that general foliage. And you can get a lot of play just as of a small pool of sounds, by tweaking pitch, animating these panner values with the legacy animation system or the mechanism system, and really taking advantage of really these panners and being able to animate. If you need something to fly overhead and you don't want to have a dynamic audio source actually move, this is a great place to bring in these panners. So I'm going to go to the video for a second here and see if I could find the spot for you guys. And I'd like to showcase some of the spatial sound here. All right. So just listen to this part here and see if you can kind of tell, like, you can't see that there's a river in front of you or a little waterfall, but kind of just visualize if you can hear the background sound here. It might be a little bit hard with these headsets, but just trying to visualize the sound that's coming from these audio sources that have been placed in here as dynamic objects, and the spatial qualities that I gave them with the panners there. Upcoming too, you have the birds being shown up here. Awesome. Okay. So again, the benefits of having the spatial audio inside of Unity here is really you're creating a lot of immersion moments for your players, right? You're creating a lot of the moments that can really bring depth, bring that height field in, you know, and maximize the most out of the clips that you're getting. And again, you could have these general 2D clips and really bring them to life, being able to physically pan them is something you wouldn't normally be able to do with this general 2D audio inside of the engine. The next point I'm going to go over is actually really just how you can, if I can select it here. Let's see. Yeah, it's not coming up. Anyway, so I think honestly a big part that's missing from this is not just a 3D plugin, right? A lot of 2D games only use, you know, 2D sound, XY axis, and that's it. But think of a game maybe like, I don't know, a real 2D game like Cuphead or something like that just released, right? Think of particles or actions to where things are coming towards and closer to the camera, and you're able to utilize that Z-plane, right, to make it feel like something's actually coming towards you or something of that nature. The Spatialize plugin really is just, that's really the main focus of it, is just being able to bring these 2D audio sources into that 3D world. So let me show you over here kind of the system that we had wrote to queue up events with that. So you can see that there's a basic just spline path that's coming down the road here. And at each one of these points, we essentially pull from that random pool of audio and attach it to the audio sources here via the clips. So it's not just this one clip playing the whole time. We try to bring more stuff in. I animate the panner values, and I actually do a mix of turning it on as Spatialize and just having it be a standard Unity dynamic audio source. And what I do to give it even more flavor is I randomize the positions of these dynamic audio sources. So I'll, you know, get a random range of the X, Y, and Z axis, place it over here in front of the player, place it in the back, and it really lightens the load of having to, you know, create these hard areas of interest, and you could get it more fluid and less, you know, of a robotic approach to how, you know, a real life, you know, forest or environment may be created. So, yeah, so that's pretty much that there. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to Chet so he maybe can break down the video a little bit more and talk more about the world building. Thanks. Okay.
Can you hear me, guys? I'm back. Okay. So, how aspiring developers can create living worlds by pairing with the Dolby Spatial plugin. So essentially, Gage covered the big bulk of it. It's really, when you're an independent developer, you kind of have to find tricks of the trade and find little niches here and there that work for your team, because a lot of games you're going to be making are very centric and specific to what your needs are. I mean, if you're making a first-person shooter, I mean, it's going to be completely different than a fantasy game. The elements are still there, depending on how much world building you actually want to do, but it's really going to depend. So Gage also spoke about key moments and how to exemplify them a bit. So those were the parts on the spline path that you saw that made randomized events happen, like the wildlife, the birds, anything that was happening overhead to get that other plane with Atmos. And then how to implement the audio tool and optimize it for your project's use. So Gage kind of touched base on that a little bit. That's going to be another thing that's going to be really specific to the type of game you're playing and what you're doing. You may want something completely different than what we're trying to achieve, and we tinkered with it. We tinker with it quite a bit, just depending, because we're just not at that stage. We're still fleshing out the core lore. So our needs for using that 2D tip that I had spoken about earlier will be totally different for a completely different kind of area. It just really depends. So final notes, how do you get it? How do you get Dolby Atmos? You can head on over to developer.dolby.com. I have another long link here that if you would like to take a screenshot of, by all means do so. I was coarse enough to actually include it in this video, so please excuse me on that. I'm going to bring Andy up right now. He'll kind of go over the rest of it and where you can find everything about Dolby related. As far as we go, we're going to be launching our subreddit and putting everything that we have on there, lore-wise as well. So you can kind of follow along with the story. We do have plans for a bit of a comic strip, if you will, if you want to call it that, with our lore included, with some of these characters you have seen here. We can't go too much into it. We're just not there yet. We're thinking first quarter. We're possibly going to be shoving all that out there in your guys' face so you guys eat it up, hopefully. You can, of course, find us on Twitter at IronArm Games. Please, by all means, follow us. Stay up to date. Sometimes we do giveaways or we answer questions. It just depends on the time. And then, of course, project updates. We do have a newsletter. We'll be including that cool little comic strip into that with all of our lore at lordsofrim.com. Please check it out, guys. All right, Andy, if you want to come on up. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. So how about a little applause for the boys? They did a bunch of work, pull us together. Show a little love. Thanks, guys. So just to kind of round things out here, I'm excited that we have some support for Unity. We've been in some of the other engines out there for indies. We know how important Unity is, so I think it's crucial to have some illumination about how this works in Unity. If you have any questions about how this works, about how to put it together, if you want to see some assets from this presentation, if you want to get a copy of Dolby Access so you can put Dolby Atmos for headphones on your computers today, come to developer.dolby.com. Sign up for an account and use the promo code MIGS18, capital, lowercase, whatever you want to do, it all works. And I will send you a code for Dolby Atmos for headphones right now. So send that over. Well, give me a day or two to catch up with my email, and then I'll send it over to you. Otherwise, we're going to post assets from the talk. And if you have any other questions, come to developer.dolby.com. Look at the very bottom of every page. There's a Contact Us link, and I'm us. So I get all that mail as well. Hit me with any questions that you've got. I can relay stuff to Chet and Gage. And thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to be back.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Boys.